Good afternoon. This is Clay Chase with Torrey Hills Capital. Welcome to the Element 29 Resource Corp virtual presentation for February 4th, 2022. Now, this is a very interesting and timely presentation today with a company that we feel is particularly well positioned to benefit from what we and many others in the market expect will be a prolonged upward trend for copper pricing. In fact, copper pricing recently broke through the $4 per pound threshold. It's currently around $4.50 per pound. It's about 100% or double from where it was, say, a year and a quarter ago. We'll be talking about a few of the key value drivers that we anticipate will be driving this pricing dynamic going forward during today's presentation, especially the looming tipping point for electric vehicles, which I think we're almost to or past at this point. And these are dynamics, market dynamics that will be adding materially to the demand for copper over the next few decades. We'll also talk about the supply side. That's very important to the future price of copper. There's a lot of mines out there that are not producing what they used to. They're starting to move into the later portions of their production cycles. And it's getting more and more difficult to put large mines on very quickly. It takes a lot of time to put these mines on. So there's not a lot of swing producers that can really get out and address this recent price move in copper. So I'd like to go ahead and get started with what we're going to talk about today. The company is Element 29 Resources. They're a copper explorer. Their primary operations in Peru. The company's two primary prospects are the Elida project in central Peru and their Flor de Cobra project that's more in the southern part of the country. It's really in the heart of the southern Peru copper belt. We'll talk about that as well. It's kind of important. Now, both of these properties are already showing signs of world-class, multi-100 million ton deposit potential. With the companies currently fleshing out these projects with major drilling programs to better define the size and scope of their in-situ copper values. Element 29 trades on the TSX Venture under the ticker symbol ECU and on the OTCQB as EMTRF, currently trading about 47 cents per share US, gives it a market cap of $38 million. With us today to discuss Element 29's operations and drilling plan going forward is the company's interim CEO and chairman, Mr. Richard Osmond, and the company's VP of Exploration, Mr. Paul Johnson. Hi, guys. How are you today?
Great, Clay. Thank you very much. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to present our story to your audience. It's really appreciated.
Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this slide of mine down so that you can start sharing your screen now, and we'll look at your PowerPoint.
Okay, just give me a second to get it up and running here. Hopefully you can see that.
Yep, it's coming up right now.
Okay, so there we go. Okay, the only thing I would really add, Clay, is that, Element 29 gets its name from the periodic table of elements, where copper is atomic number 29. So that's sort of an indirect way of saying we're really copper focused, and all of our projects right now are in Peru. We're also listed on the Frankfurt Exchange, and we just got DTC eligibility, I think, which is going to be really important. It allows for the Element 29 shares to trade more freely in the US as well, which is really good.
Great.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Just as a disclaimer, just throw it up on the screen for a second here, but if you want to read it in more detail, please go to our website. We're not copper economists, but just to get into a little bit of why copper, I guess, from a copper demand perspective, the way we see copper really is the metal that's needed to bring energy to market. It's the most conductive of all the non-ferrous metals, and it's even 30% more conductive than gold. I would say that it's looking at copper directly as well. It's much more efficient than say other metals such as aluminum, where aluminum tends to have a different thermal conductivity characteristics, and it heats up, and in a lot of cases can melt when you're trying to move a lot of current through it. So copper really is the most efficient way to move energy around the world. Copper demand for green energy is expected to more than double over the next 10 years, from about 2.1 million tons per year to about 4.2. And most of that's going to be driven by the EV market with batteries and electric vehicles. And we're expecting to see about 4 to 15 times more copper in EVs than in regular combustion engines. You'll see on the right, there's a pinwheel diagram that's actually put together and by Bloomsburg as part of a sponsored article by Tech. And it sort of shows essentially where most of that copper is going to go in the energy transition space. You'll see that basically now we're putting about 200,000 tons of copper into EVs. That's expected to grow to like 1.8 million tons by the end of this decade. That's quite a significant jump, and that's where you're going to see a lot of additional supply coming online related to the energy transition. Looking at copper supply, already copper inventories are at near record lows on the London Exchange as well as the Shanghai. At the same time, resources are still declining while demand is increasing. And, it doesn't take a whole lot of additional demand to sort of throw that supply chain out of balance, I guess. And the diagram on the right sort of shows, this was put together by Woods and Mackenzie back in 2020. And the red and the blue sort of show the expected demand moving forward, this is expected supply moving forward. And then the black line is really the expected demand. You're actually sort of seeing, they're sort of predicting a bit of a copper cliff occurring likely starting next year, where demand is going to start to outstrip supply. And that's going to be very positive for copper prices moving forward, I think. Looking at
the real glaring. Hey,
Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think the glaring part of that slide is the fact that the production starts to go back down in 2025, and I think that's a direct reflection of a lot of these big mines kind of getting to the end of their kind of production cycles, or at a point where they're really going to have to add a lot of new capital in to keep them at level production. I remember that about, I think 6 or 7 months ago, Codelco came out and said they're going to have to spend $40 billion over the next 10 years to keep, or something like that, to keep their production just level. And they couldn't grow production. So that's, and they're I think one of the world's largest, if not the largest producer. That Chile is the largest producer, and they're one of the largest producers in Chile. So it just kind of gives you an idea of where the supply side, I mean, the demand is one thing, but if the supply can't meet or continue to increase, I think copper is going to be in a very tight market for quite a while.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there aren't that many substitutions either. Once you get to a certain level, you start to see that. But certainly, I mean, we've been exploring for copper for quite a long time. And, these things, especially like tier one assets, which are really the only ones that move the needle here, they take billions of dollars to develop, and 5 to 10 years at least to get into production. So there really isn't anything in the pipeline that we sort of see. What's really going to happen, I think, is as the copper price moves up, you'll see a lot of the existing operations start to expand their resource base by cutting their, basically by reducing their cutoff grades. And to mine at lower cutoff grade just means that the price of copper is going to have to go up. And at the same time, they're also looking at going underground. And your production going underground is about 1/3 of what it is on surface, at least 1/2 to 1/3. So in order to get the same amount of copper from underground, you basically got to have twice the grade, and that's not going to be likely. So I mean, that also sort of suggests that copper prices have to go up in order to make that economic. So pretty exciting, I think, overall for copper prices in the near future, at least. Looking at Peru, why Peru? I would say, well, Peru is the second largest copper producer in the world, next to Chile, and Peru produces about close to 2.5 million tons of copper per year. The diagram on the right sort of shows the copper inventory for Peru that's provided by Ingemet, which is a government group. And you can actually see in red dots, these are all the large copper deposits, and they're sort of distributed throughout the Peruvian Andes. And most porphyry copper deposits actually form in the roots of ancient volcanoes. So they have to form and then erode down to like that 3 to 5 kilometer level where these porphyries are exposed. So that takes a lot of time, and you know, it's not something that happens overnight. So for example, the Florida Cobra project, which is one of Element 29's projects, actually is located in southern Peru. What's called the Southern Peru Copper Belt. And this is where some of the largest copper mines in not only in Peru but in the world are located. And we have our Florida Cobra project sort of sitting in that corridor. Our Elida project is located a little bit further north in what's called the Miocene corridor. And that was actually a new discovery by Element 29 in that area. From a Peruvian focus as well, like mining makes up about 60% of Peru's exports and about 13% of its GDP. It's the second lowest copper producer in the world. You can see a diagram put together by CRU out of Chile, and it sort of shows the cash costs to produce in 5 of the 6 largest copper producing countries in the world. And you can see again, Chile and Peru are the lowest cost producers, you know, in the world. Exploration costs in Chile also are probably the lowest in South America. At least you're looking at about $3 a hectare. That's significantly lower than what it would be to work in places like Chile, where you end up spending millions of dollars trying to get access to land in some of the key mining jurisdictions there. And one of the things that we believe, even though you hear a lot of noise coming out of Peru, mines are still getting permitted. A good example of that is the Bear Creek Karani deposit, which just got permitted, and it's located in southern Peru, which is a really tough jurisdiction to get mine permits. So it sort of shows you if you do a good job and you look after all your stakeholders, and we feel the community is one of the stakeholders. If they believe that they're benefiting from putting a mine in production, then the government's willing to support it.
Yeah, we were really kind of surprised, and when Castillo came out and so publicly talked about that project and made it a point to really kind of almost endorse the project when it opened up here recently. So I thought that was a very good sign for what's happening down in Peru.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. Bear Creek have been working in Peru for quite a while. They have a good reputation there, and they've done a lot of great work in that district, and they really promoted it. The benefits to the communities, and they have some really good agreements in place. So I think if the community sees that they're going to benefit from having a mine in their jurisdiction, then once you get the community support, I think getting the permits becomes a lot easier, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on, just getting into Element 29 in a little bit more detail. As mentioned, the company is focused on 2 high-quality copper projects in Peru with excellent potential for resource growth. At least that's what we think. And those are the Florida Cobra project and the Elida. Both have well mineralized intercepts from previous drilling. And I would say they're strategically well located, within the country. They're at low elevation and near infrastructure. The company itself, I think we have a pretty strong leadership team. We have a lot of experience exploring in Peru, and we also have a bit of experience operating there. I think our share structure is pretty tight. We have less than 80 million shares issued, and I can get into that in a little bit more detail. And we have a catalyst-driven work plan. We're looking to get initial resources on the books for this year on both projects. From a team perspective, I won't go into this in a lot of detail. You can probably look at this on our website a bit more, but what I would say is, if Paul has joined us here today, and Paul's our VP of Exploration. I like to promote or sort of highlight Paul because of his background. I mean, we consider Paul a porphyry expert. He was the chief geoscientist for South America for Teck. He's worked on some world-class deposits, and he brings a lot of value to the Element 29 team. Also, I would like to highlight Ricardo Lebeaux. Ricardo is a mineral economist. He's been involved in the mining sector in Peru for quite a long time, and he actually used to be the Vice Minister of Mines for under President Kaczynski in the Peruvian government. So he's very well connected and has a network to be able to get things done. And a good example of that is we just got two drill programs permitted in the last year. So, you know, he really does add a lot of value. On a share structure, you know, we have close to 80 million shares issued, 79.8 million. We have about 7.9 million in the bank. You know, on the ownership side, Globetrotters, who founded Element 29, have about 14% of the shares, and those are tightly held, of course. Management and board have about 7% of the company. And then RCF, who's a private equity group, own about 5%. And we just brought in Polygon Global Partners out of the UK as an institutional investor, and they've acquired about 8% of the equity in Element 29. The remaining 66% are held by retail and institutional investors. Haywood make up a big part of that as well, and Pathfinder and a few others.
Yeah, we're pretty familiar with RCF Resource Capital Funds, and we know that they're extremely they're very picky in terms of what they invest in. We would like to bring companies around there in Denver and bring companies around for them to meet. And I think we got about 1 out of every 8 or 9 companies, something like that they would even want to meet with. So they're a very discerning investor. So the fact that they have got a stake in you is, I'd say, is quite impressive, for sure.
Yeah, thanks. I think it does bring a lot of credibility. You know, one of the things that RCF are known for is their due diligence. So, you know, if we can pass that and they can become an investor, I think it says a lot about and sends a pretty good message to the markets of the kind of team we have and you know, what we're trying to do.
That's a strong endorsement.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, just as a strategic focus, you know, Element 29 was formed from the spin out of, it was actually 4 projects, but 2 main projects, Elida and Florida Cobra. Elida was actually a grassroots discovery by Globetrotters in central Peru. And Florida Cobra started off initially with the acquisition of a historical secondary copper resource, pretty close to Cerro Verde in, you know, one of the top mining jurisdictions in the world, as I mentioned. So with those, we just felt that it made more sense to list Element 29 than to sort of, you know, move those or try and get them partner with a major or some other group. So hence, you know, the reason why we felt that, you know, we could generate more value and de-risk these assets if we get them into you know, a company like Element 29. So the real focus of Element 29 will be to develop low-cost, low-risk copper production opportunities in Peru. We feel that Florida Cobra provides that opportunity, and I'll get into a bit of that, but also to continue to build our resource base to over 4 million tons of contained copper. And those kind of numbers are sort of mentioned primarily because, you know, I mean, you start to get a bit of quite a critical mass when you get to those kind of levels, and those are the kind of levels that you have to get to be, you know, when the majors start to take you seriously as a potential takeover target.
When you talk about 4 million tons of contained metal, like quick math on that's about 8 billion pounds of copper. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty close to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's 2140, so a little bit more, 8 point something billion pounds of copper in it. You know, at $4.50 a pound, I mean, we're talking about some real money there now in terms of putting that size of a resource together.
Yeah, I mean, we're not there yet, but I mean, I think both our projects.
No, I know
there is potential for that, but you know, we'll be hopefully getting a start on that. You know, getting some resources on the books at Elida and Candelaria, particularly from the current drill programs. We just finished up the Elida program where we think we've gotten to a point where we can get an initial resource estimate, and I mean, we're really just validating resources at Florida Cobra, so we're sort of hoping to be able to get those to an initial resource estimate as well. So pretty exciting. It's a good start, I think, and you know, we'll see how it goes, but you know, it's looking pretty good so far. At this point, Clay, I think I'm going to hand it over to Paul, and Paul can start talking a little bit more about the project specifically.
Oh, thanks, Richard. Yeah, we'll start with Elida. We just finished a 4,000 meter drilling program there. I'm quite excited to share some of those results with you, but just to set that up. Our target there when we started is a target between 250 and 500 million tons with grades in the range of 0.35% to 0.45% copper, with a healthy moly credit of 0.03 to 0.05% molybdenum. And also you can see there a little bit of silver as well in the 0.35 to 0.45 range. This project is 100% owned by Element 29. And the target we're currently working on is completely inside that 19,210 hectares. The alteration system that we're looking at present is in the order of 2 by 2 kilometers. It represents a cluster of porphyry centers. We're currently just looking at the results from one of those, and we have plans, as I'll get into, on exploring some of the other targets within that cluster. The results from the initial drilling program that occurred in 2014, 2015 really were the motivation for us aggressively exploring the property. Just to refresh your memory, that was a hole that returned 403 meters at 0.2% copper, including a shorter internal interval of 265 at 0.53% copper. The location is really attractive. It has good infrastructure nearby, and as important, it's at a lower elevation. Most of the property is below 2,000 meters, and target one is currently in that 1,600 meter range. So very attractive for eventual operation. It gets that. Now, can I operate this, Richard, or do you need to advance?
I'll advance it, Paul. One thing I would add, Clay, is that, if you're looking at 500 million tons of around, close to 0.5% copper equivalent kind of thing, that works out to 2.5. If you have if at Elida in the target one area, if you have, if you come up with a 500 million ton resource at close to 0.5% copper equivalent, that works out to 2.5 million tons of contained copper equivalent right there alone. So that's over halfway towards our target, just on that one target area. So, so that's exciting, right? I mean, that it sort of shows that there is potential. It's not it's realistic to think that there is an opportunity that we could actually get to our targets that we've sort of stated. Anyway,
that's great.
Paul, I'll continue to do it through my I'll control it if that's okay.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, no problem at all. So a little bit more on the location. As I mentioned, it's pretty well located for a large system. It's about 200 kilometers north of Lima. You can follow the Pan American Highway up to Barranca, which is a major port in the country of Peru, and it's 85 kilometers inland from the coast. It's a paved road for most of the way up to the project. There's intermittent sections of gravel, but for the most part, it's a public road that's used to access some of the towns in the higher Andes inland. The electrical grid is quite well established nearby as well. There is a 45 megawatt hydroelectric station 15 kilometers down from the project, and of course all the infrastructure to connect that to the national grid is in place. The port, as I mentioned, there's port facilities at Barranca, but also point out the port that Antamina uses for their concentrate shipments. That green line you see there is the Antamina pipeline that runs into that port facility, and that's where they ship out their concentrates from the mine site. Also, too, given all the mines in the immediate vicinity, there is Antamina, there's the whole Cerro de Pasco complex in Toromocho further to the south. It means that there's an ample skilled workforce nearby. Next one, please. So as I mentioned, the project is really based on a cluster of porphyry centers. We've been looking at the first one that's in the center there, which was the focus of the initial drilling program that was carried out by Lundin under option in 1940, or 19 2014 and 2015. Sorry about that. And we followed up with a program in order to meet three objectives. One was to confirm the limits of mineralization to make sure that our initial interpretations would hold up to more drilling, which they have. We wanted to really increase the drill hole spacing, or not increase it, but decrease it, so that they were close enough that we could start to estimate a potential mineral resource. And finally, and importantly, we wanted to look at the vertical extent of mineralization with a very deep hole. When this program started, we didn't know how extensive the mineralization would be with depth, and we wanted to look at how the mineralization either changed or stayed the same with depth, and if it did persist to those depths that we drilled to. So we've done all of that, and the results were quite encouraging, as I'll explain when I can show you a section. I think the next slide will help me do that. So the program that we just completed, it was 4,400 meters. Well, actually, to be precise, 4,481 meters. We completed that in December, mid-December last year. That returned multiple long mineralized intervals. The vertical continuity and lateral continuity were demonstrated by that drilling. And the initial boundaries that we had established from the earlier drilling held up very well. Most of the holes intersected that boundary from the original interpretation within about 50 meters of where they were interpreted to be, and some of them extended it. If you notice the hole to the south, it actually pushed the mineralization quite further than it was originally interpreted. And as far as the depth goes, we more than doubled the depth of investigation of the mineral system, and we can now see that it persists to 933 meters below surface, and it still remains open at depth. We didn't hit the end of mineralization with that deep hole. And as a highlight, the deepest hole we drilled was the last one in the program. It was ELID 25. That intersected 908.75 meters at 0.55 copper equivalent. That copper equivalent comes from 0.39% copper, 0.035% molybdenum, and 2.9 grams per ton silver. I also like to point out that the arsenic is quite low. We see this throughout all the drilling, that the arsenic levels are below 100 ppm. In this case, you can see it came in at 42 ppm. So that's really a result of not having a high arsenic epithermal overprint on the mineralization. The other important characteristic of the mineralization that we've seen in this hole and others is that within that broader mineralization, there are very well-defined higher grade intervals, and this one here is 339.55 meters at 0.67% copper equivalent. That's coming from 0.5% copper, 0.035% moly, and 4.3 grams per ton gold, and a similar level at 36 parts per million arsenic. Next one, please. This is now a section showing that long hole with the main intervals calculated. They're composite intervals over the sections, but you can also see the individual samples. The brighter colors are better grades, and you can see that the entire hole returned values that were above our working cutoff of 0.25% through the whole length of the hole, with higher grade intervals within that longer, as I said, longer broad zone of mineralization. Also note at the bottom that that hole did not get out of mineralization. It ended in mineralization at 0.35% copper and 0.004% moly. That hole was ended for operational reasons. We were getting to the limit of the drilling unit and other considerations. We had to shut that hole down. So,
Hey, Paul.
Yes.
Question: if you look at this cross section, you look at to the left of the mineralized zone, QMP stock, and then but you look to the right of the of the mineralized zone. Do you know what's over there to the right? Could the mineralized zone continue to the right, or is it been
This
determined that
partic-
that's where the mineralization ends?
This particular section is right in the middle, as we call it, northern arm of the mineralization that's sitting north of that lower grade, which
I
is
gotcha.
occupied by a stock. There is another recent hole just 100 meters to the east, which is to the right, and then another drill hole again over to the east. And you can see how that pinkish tone then turns around and forms
Right.
the eastern side of the donut, as we've been calling it.
Right.
That's really just constrained by the previous drilling and what we see at surface. There are exposures that allow us to draw that surface there. In general, what we've seen is the mineralization is centered on that internal low-grade porphyry stock. It's a porphyry intrusion
Gotcha.
that sits right in there. So we need to
Thank
do
you.
a lot more drilling on that edge to fully define it. There needs to be a lot more work, but that's our interpretation at the moment based on the available information.
Okay.
Yeah, so that gives you a little bit of an idea of the three-dimensional aspects of the system as we know it to date. So we can go on to the next one.
Yeah, I thought I'd just add quickly, Clay. You know, you can actually see the mineralization starts right below the colluvial cover, colluvium. There's only about 20 to 30 meters of colluvium in this area, and then you get into like 0.5% copper. And that makes this project really scalable. You know, I mean, you can get in and get an open pit started without a lot of stripping, and that's really good for payback. Engineers really like that kind of thing. And you know, it makes for you know, right. What's really interesting is that you know, within that hole, we have like 0.5% copper for about 0.67% copper equivalent down to almost like 340 meters, starting at surface here down to about this point. So I mean, you know, those are pretty large intervals, even, you know, for that amount. We don't expect to be open pitting this down to 1 kilometer, but we really wanted to show continuity of mineralization, you know, quite deep into the system.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually too, Richard, just before we leave that, I'd like people just to notice the width of mineralization in this particular section. Based on what we've seen in the surrounding holes, it's looking to be about 250 meters wide horizontally. So it's quite a substantial width in this northern arm of the zone.
Mm-hmm. We're also looking to build a resource base in this area here of Target 1. So, you know, that's about 700 plus meters across here, and it's mineralized all the way along. And, you know, that's a pretty big system. And then that's just one target out of 5 in the LADEP project. And Paul will probably get into that a bit more, but, you know, it really does show. And, you know, the resources that we're looking to put out, we're only going to be looking at, you know, putting a resource base together down to about 400 meters vertically here. So there's lots of room to grow this thing in the future. And we'll be doing more drilling as time progresses on this project. But the real plan is to get that initial resource out so that we can start to build on it.
Yeah, that's a good place to pick up, Richard. Our next steps really are to undertake a mineral resource estimate. We really want to look at that, you know, not to do the whole thing because we don't have the drill hole spacing, but that's a valuable exercise to go through because it will give us insight into further drilling and what we might need in order to increase the confidence in those resources. But also it will help us understand the internal distribution of mineralization, the higher grade zones that we've picked up in the recent drilling and the previous drilling. We'll be able to look at that and see where they sit in space. And of course, in the longer term, that becomes very important for mine planning. If you can identify and mine a higher grade zone early on in the mine plan, it helps pay back and really makes the economics stronger. So that's the first thing that we're about to undertake now that we have this drilling done. We did achieve the spacing that we'd hoped, and now we'll start to undertake that work. But the other thing that's really exciting is looking at these other targets. We've been really just working on target 1 because that was where the initial drilling showed good mineralization and an obvious place to start. But while we've been doing that work, we've also been looking more at what's going on at target 2 in particular. And that's an interesting target because it not only has the size, but it also has potential for a supergene enrichment zone. If you look at the overall property, a lot of the very late stage erosion has removed the supergene profile above target 1. So it's exposed sulfide mineralization right beneath that colluvial cover. But at target 2, it has an intact leach capping on it. And through looking at the exposures in that area, we can see that profile is consistent with other leach cappings that sit over enrichment zones. We also know that leach capping is developed on mineralized rock. So the drilling program we intend to do there in the later part of 2022 will really test that concept as well as look at the sulfide potential underneath it. So we're currently putting plans together on how we're going to set up the drilling there. And at the same time, if you notice target 3 further south, it's a similar environment, similar preservation of a profile, and we'll be doing pretty much the same thing there to test for mineralization. If we are successful in getting hits on those 2 targets, it will greatly expand the overall size of the resources.
Mm-hmm. And we already have drill permits for that as well, Clay. That they're already part of the existing permitting.
That's
yes,
great. What's the time frame of drilling some of the next targets?
Well, right now we're in the process of we're drilling now at our project down in southern Peru, and that team will then return to this project when that part of the project is done. So it's really a scheduling thing. We hope to get in there in the second half of 2022.
Oh, great.
Yeah. Just to finish up this slide, the other job we need to do is to fill in the gaps in target 1. We didn't completely drill around the donut in this last program, so there's some extra drilling we'd like to do where Richard has the cursor. You can see there isn't any drill holes in those areas. And we're also very interested in that northwest sector of the whole donut. There's indications of stronger mineralization in that area, some geological indicators, as well as the actual assays that we had returned. So we want to look at that as well to see what's going on. So those are the major components of the work we have planned this year. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Is there the potential that these could actually be connected?
In part,
between them?
we don't know that yet. There's just really 3 holes that give us a sense of what's going on. I don't know if you can see hole 16, which is between target 1 and 2, Richard. If you can just highlight that one, that's the one that shoots off to the northeast. That gives us a bit of constraint on what's going on at subsurface. And then there's also the ones 17 and 18 just a little bit to the west of that, Richard. Those 2 holes that cross, they also give us a sense that the mineral system there is terminated. But ultimately, all of these porphyry centers emanate from a single source, and they could coalesce at depth. We just have no information to really state that yet. For now, we're treating them as individual centers and exploring them as such, and we'll work that out as we go.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Okay. Richard has a video here, and he'll explain as the video runs what you're seeing.
Yeah, this was taken with a drone, and right now we're hovering, sort of looking north at the project, and you can actually see the drill camp in here, and then the access road up to the drilling. This is a target 4 area that's never really been drilled. You can notice how there's no community here, there's no agriculture, so it's not a concern in that regard. You can actually see the leaching of the iron oxides and some copper oxides out of the target one area. It looks a little steeper than it is. It's a bit of an optical illusion. Everything seems to be pushed up against the hill. Then you're coming down here, you get into the target 3 area. You know, Paul and the group have mapped out some good veining in here, good stock working, a little bit of leaching, so you don't really know exactly what the grades are going to be till you drill it. And this is sort of the target 2 area in here, and you actually see what Paul was talking about with the leach capping. Like, this is about 3.5 kilometers to 4 kilometers away up to this point, so it's quite a distance. I mean, this is a huge system, and you know, a lot of it's undercover out through here, but we do see good leach capping, good veining densities. We're seeing some iron oxides, hematite, you know, alterations, sort of oxidation coming in down in here, and that may be related to the partial oxidation of an earlier leach enrichment blanket. So, you know, and we also see good copper oxides sort of coming out down through this quebrada, which they got to be coming out of somewhere. So we're pretty excited about getting into this project target area for the next round of drilling. Okay, moving on to Florida Cobra.
Right. This is the project that we're currently working at. We're undertaking about a 4,000 meter drill program that's just starting. It's a project that really has 2 components. There's 2 porphyry targets that we have there. We refer to them as Candelaria, which is on an option, 127 hectares that has an option 29 to 100%. And then Octavizado is the project that's on ground that's 100% owned by Element 29, and that was picked up by staking a few years back. This property also has excellent infrastructure. It has an excellent location. It, as Elida did, has a fairly low elevation. It's similar elevation to the large Cerro Verde mine further to the northwest. Because of that mine and other mines in the area, it also is well positioned for mining operations. Arequipa is the 2nd largest city in Peru. It has an ample workforce. A lot of those people are connected to the Cerro Verde operation. It's managed by Freeport-McMoRan. So there's good transport infrastructure. The main electrical corridor, part of the national grid, runs within 5 kilometers of the project. You can see the towers running just to the north. It's also attractive because it had a historical resource of 57.4 million tons at 0.6% copper. That historical resource was outlined in the 1990s by a Vancouver Junior and the Phelps Dodge Company. And really what we're doing is following up on that. The reason that it was never really developed in any serious way over the years is because the property was owned by a Peruvian company that was doing small scale mining on the project, and they were more interested in production than exploration. But as a result of the work that those 2 companies did in the 90s, there was an intercept there of 272 meters at 0.92% copper, starting at 78 meters below surface. That intersected both an enrichment zone and a lower primary sulfide zone. The enrichment zone had 116 meters at 1.4% copper as a secondary enrichment zone. And underneath that was a primary zone, 156 meters at 0.58% copper. Why we're interested in this, obviously the enrichment zone is very attractive, but during that time, there wasn't a lot of emphasis on looking for sulfide resources. So much of the drilling that was completed in the 90s really was really just trying to evaluate that supergene zone. There were a few holes that went into the sulfide, and that's given us the encouragement to explore that further. This is a setup that was really common in many mines through the last 20 years, where mines got started on an enrichment zone, and then gradually, as those enrichment resources were exhausted, they opened up into the sulfide resources. Richard, you got anything else you'd like to add with this particular intro to the project?
Well, I would say the key thing is that, I mean, it's located in the southern Peru copper belt, and that's, well, one of the key things at least. And you know, that's it's quite a prolific jurisdiction. It's probably one of the top copper mining jurisdictions in the world. Very difficult to get ground there. We've got like 2,000 hectares. Ground in this part of Peru does not come open every day. It probably takes at least 10 years in a mine cycle to even see any ground come open at all. So, you know, you look at a major mining company that's sort of operating in Peru, you get so much turnover. They, you know, in actual fact, it was Anglo American that dropped the ground that we staked back in 2015 when copper price dropped down to like $2 a pound. And of course, we're in there, and we already had Candelaria. We're working on getting in a deal there, so we just staked that ground, and you know, we knew there was good potential there, and whatnot. So I mean, you know, a company trying to get into a place like Peru, to, you know, one of the top mining jurisdictions in the world, to pick up the kind of projects that we have, it just doesn't happen overnight. You need to spend a lot of time there. So, you know, Globetrotter spent about 7 years building this portfolio to get to this stage, kind of thing. So I think that's important for people to know.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Richard.
Didn't you have someone on your team has a personal connection with the family that owned this project as well? Doesn't that play a part in your ability to get this when other people might have wanted it and just weren't in the right position?
Yeah, that's exactly right, Clay. I mean, Manuel Montoya, who works with Globetrotter, he's the VP of Exploration. He had a long-standing relationship with the family. It's a family of like 5 brothers, and you know, a couple of brothers were really active in operating here, but you know, the other members of the family who were shareholders weren't quite so active. But they got to the age where they were ready to retire, you know, and because Manuel has built such a good relationship with these guys, lots of visits to Arequipa, lots of, you know, meeting up for social events and dinners and things, that, you know, they really trusted us to do the right thing, and, you know, put together a sort of a deal structure that would be very beneficial to them and their family, as well as to Globetrotters in Element 29. And then, you know, this is a coveted project. Lots of companies have tried to get in there to make a deal with these guys, and they just don't trust a lot of people. And you know, we put the time in, and you know, we generally enjoy working with this group and this family. It's been a lot of fun.
That's a great situation to be in, to have that kind of inside line to getting the project. That speaks volumes to the team that you have put together down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, you gotta be vested in Peru. We've got a long history of working there, and you know, a lot of people know us as being you know, world-class copper explorers, I would think. And you know, and I think that sort of has helped us get to where we are today.
Great. Yeah, well, so can you tell us what you're going to do with the exploration program at Florida Cobra? A little bit more detail.
Definitely. I'll just go through this one quickly just to show you our neighborhood. We've mentioned a couple of mines there. All the ones that you see, Cerro Verde, Cajone, even the Quellaveco project in Tocopala, are all multi-billion ton size deposits. Chapi is a smaller deposit located about 5 kilometers away from our project. They all sit within what we call the southern Peru copper belt, which is really part of, geologically speaking, the Paleocene belt, which is characterized by the intrusions, porphyry intrusions of a specific age. In this case, they're Paleocene. They're in around 60 to 50 million years old. It's well located. The neighborhood is good. When we talk about exploring in and around large systems, certainly see that's very much the case with Florida Cobra. So the next one is really going to get into what the property looks like and the 2 targets that we see there. I'll go over this really briefly. It's actually a fairly simple story. Candelaria is on the southeast. If Richard can just show that there, that's where the previous or historical drilling was done. That is where most of the work is concentrated. And that was the original focus of the acquisition that Globetrotters made, and that ended up being spun into Element 29. So that's the 127 hectare claim that that Element 29 has an option to earn 100% in. And then following on the back of that was all the other ground that was staked. And that ended up encompassing the Atravesado target. And that's a very attractive early stage target. It hasn't been drilled, but the surface work that's been done and the geophysics that's been done has been very encouraging. What you're seeing here is a chargeability part of an IP survey that was done in 2019. And you can see that there's a very prominent chargeable zone that is encircling that black dashed line. The chargeable zone is a result of phyllic alteration, which contains a lot of fine grained pyrite. And that's typically distributed around the porphyry center, which is in the middle of that black line where all the geochemical results are coming up orange, red, and magenta. That looks to be a potassic zone. That would be our main target for future exploration. Permitting is underway. We're working to get that permitted so we can drill it. That will probably take us until the end of the year, and be planning to drill that in 2023. It's a large target. It's about 1.5 kilometers across. As I said, it's not been drilled, so we don't know much about the subsurface, but all the indications are that we have a porphyry system within that. We'll be planning to evaluate that. More in the immediate term, we're looking at drilling a program on Candelaria. I think I've got another slide in a few more, but that's an enrichment zone that was drilled. That's a little bit of an image so you can see the subhorizontal nature of the enrichment zone that's sitting above the sulfide resources. What this diagram is good for is just showing you the limited amount of drilling that was put in beneath that enrichment zone. You see all the holes either ended in it or just went a short distance underneath it. The hole that we've been highlighting is K08. It's in the middle of all of that. That's the one that has the longest and best mineralized interval in the sulfide zone. So this program that I'm going to describe is really designed to do two things. One is to test and duplicate some of the drill holes that were in that historical data set, and we're also going to be extending those holes past where the historical drill holes went, so we can get a better look at what's going on within the sulfide part of it. So I think the next slide gives us a picture of what that program is. So by far the most important thing this program will do is verify the previous drill holes. Those holes didn't have any materials left for us to resample to check any of the historical results. That material was all used up in the initial exploration of the project to do resampling and metallurgical test work, that type of stuff. So we don't have a physical record of that material, and it's really the only way around that is to re-drill those holes. So 9 of the 11 planned holes will be doing that, and those holes were selected by looking at the contribution of metal each of the historical holes had to the overall metal in the resource, and we just picked the holes that would give us the maximum amount of return on that. So they should estimate approximately 70 to 75% of the metal that was determined in the earlier drilling, and with that will allow us to use the rest of the holes in our work. We have the data, we just don't have the physical information to verify it. And then we've got 2 holes that are marked new 1 and new 2. I don't know whether Richard can point to those off onto the west and above K10 there. And directly east of that is new 2. Those holes will be angled. The original drilling that was done was all done vertically to test the horizontal supergene zone, but we're going to angle these holes to get a better sense of what the geology and mineralization is doing along strike of the better mineralized parts of the system. So that will make up the approximately 4,000 meter drilling program that's just started. Oh, just add that too, that this drilling will also give us materials that we can begin to do some metallurgical testing. Yes,
So
sorry,
just
Clay.
to clarify, that's okay. Just to clarify, so the drilling is starting now at the Candelaria prospect area. You're going to permit the other, the larger zone to the northwest, and the Atravesado, and you expect that those would be starting to drill later in the year?
Yeah, let me elaborate
part of it.
on that a little bit. The property straddles two jurisdictions. So the reason that the permitting is done in two different cycles is because the Atravesado target, it sits in a different jurisdiction, and actually the land control is by a different party. In this case, it's an indigenous group. In Peru, they designate groups as indigenous, and if they are, they require a different permitting path. There's some consultations that have to go on, and that adds time to the whole permitting process. On the other side, it's a private landowner. There wasn't that extra overlay. It's not an indigenous group, so the permitting could be taken a lot quicker. And there was also all the disruption from previous drilling that when they see that there's already been a drilling program there, it can make things go a little bit quicker too. So that's why we're trying to be as realistic as possible in our expectations for getting that permitting done. But at the moment, it's really in our plans that will take through the rest of this year at Atravesado to get that permit in place. And of course, the permit at Candelaria is already in place, and we're all ready to go drill.
So the drilling that you're going to do at Candelaria, that'll be to both confirm the resource that's there, the historical resource. Is it also to maybe potentially expand on the size of that by going a little deeper or going outside the boundary of the current resource estimate?
It won't go outside the boundary, but really the depth extent of mineralization was never really investigated. So this program will give us an indication if there is a sizable primary resource underneath the supergene. We won't have enough holes, obviously, to do a resource on it in supergene, or on the hypogene or primary resource. But it will let us know and give us a lot of geological information on where that particular mineralization is going and how persistent it is at depth. Because it as you could see from that first hole that we were talking about, the historical hole, that ended in mineralization.
Yeah, no, it looks very promising to increase that resource, and then looks like you have a great potential to increase it over in that Atravesado zone as well. So that'd be great.
Yeah, that's actually quite a long. That's a long extent for a mineral system. When you add it all up, it ends up being in excess of 4 kilometers from end to end.
That's kind of like the that's the project Cerrado, or no?
Serra Verde is
project that's going.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. Serra Verde is the mine that's located about 26 kilometers to the northwest, and it's roughly the same scale in terms of distances across the system.
And that has a confirmed resource of what, 4 billion tons?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, a lot of these enrichment blankets, Clay, they're sort of like tips of the iceberg, right? They form these blankets on top of the big porphyry itself. It's only where down to the level of the erosion, or the weathering, and below that you have all this primary sulfide, and that can continue at depth for quite a distance, and that's where a lot of big porphyry systems build most of the resource base. They actually don't even drill out the whole thing. They only drill incrementally to get to a point where they can get it into a reserve, to get it into the mine plan. And that's the kind of scale of systems these things can be. So you could be mining and exploring in these types of systems for like decades, kind of thing.
Sure.
Yeah. pretty exciting overall. I'm going to show a video in the next slide, I think, that sort of looks from Etrovizado to the southeast towards Candelaria and also down to the Chappie mine, which is about 5 to 6 kilometers away. And that will give it a pretty good perspective. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the video. You can actually see the outlay of the Candelaria deposit here. You can see the historical workings and all of this iron oxide hematite alteration associated with the leach capping. And just for scale here, Clay, there's a truck. So that'll give you an idea how big the system is. You can see the historical workings. Yeah. So you don't see any agriculture in here, no communities actively operating here. There's another deposit here owned by Nexa called Pampa Negra, I think, and there's the Chappie mine down here. You can actually see the alteration zone continue all the way up along here and into Candelaria. So it's pretty much part of the same system, I would think. And anyway,
did you shoot that video? Did the company shoot that?
We did, yeah. We just took that recently. And
is that a drone? Is that a drone shot?
Yeah, it's a drone shot that we
pretty cool.
Yeah, we're going to be getting some more. We'll probably get some more footage once we get in there, and we'll get a drone in there now that the drill's up and running, the camp's in place. We'll be able to get some video of that footage of that as well, and get that out to people.
That'd be great. We'd love to see that when you get it done.
Yeah, I mean, we can probably use some of this to actually sort of superimpose the location of the ore bodies and the resources in there. If we can get to that stage, once we can get an initial resource estimate out, we can really start to show the scale of the system quite nicely. Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. Just from a work plan perspective for 2022. We're really focused on Fort Cobra in the first half of the year, looking at getting the Atrovizado permits. We've started that process, but it's going to be ongoing. It'll be a bit of a slow process, but we'll get it done, hopefully. We started the resource drilling at Candelaria, and that's going to be ongoing for about 3 to 4 months. And of course, we'll be getting news out as that becomes available. The assay turnarounds are about 3 weeks, so it's not like in some places where you're looking at 3-month turnaround. This is actually pretty reasonable. So we should be getting some news flow fairly quickly. We're going to be starting some metallurgical work on that core while it's fresh, and not oxidized, and that'll be helpful for moving forward with an initial resource estimate, and then of course getting into a PEA, likely starting some point this year and extending into 2023. At Elida, we just finished getting all the news out on the Elida drilling, so that was really exciting. We had some really good results. It was better than expected, I would say. We're going to start working on an initial resource estimate this quarter, and we're sort of hoping to have that available, hopefully by Q3. And we've already started some more met work on the core while it's fresh, not oxidized as well. And we're going to start doing a phase 2 drill program, hopefully in Q3 of this year. And we'll be following up on the initial resource estimates at target 1, hopefully, and being able to expand that resource at that location, but also to really get some holes into targets 2 and 3, which will really show the overall potential of the Elida system, right? So, and I think that's it.
A lot of catalysts. Great.
Yeah, we're pretty busy. We've got about, as mentioned, about close to $8 million in the bank. We may look at doing a financing if we see a window at some point, close to the end of Q2, going into Q3. Certainly after we finish the Candelaria drilling, and we don't want to be sort of going into the Elida drill program with not quite enough to finish off the year, enough cash in the bank. So that'll be something that we'll be looking at doing most likely, as long as the markets don't go sideways or backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
copper's still very strong.
Absolutely. So I think our projects are really, they're pretty advanced. Certainly good potential to continue to grow these projects, and they're located in what I would say is one of the top mining jurisdictions in the world. And And, we have a fairly strong team with lots of experience operating in Peru and exploring in Peru. Our share structure, I think, is still very tight and very tightly held for sure. And we've got a real solid work plan of actually potentially putting resources on the books for this year.
Well, great presentation. Really exciting what you have going at your two projects there. And like I said a minute ago, with copper at $4.50 a pound, it's a great time for you to be bringing these projects up to full speed. And you've got a lot going on in terms of the number of new catalysts that you'll be bringing to the market. And we're looking forward to that news coming out over the next few months. As you guys have been presenting, I've kind of written down a couple numbers here from what, if your goal is to get to 8 billion pounds of contained metal. I actually did one at half of that rate, 4 billion tons, 4 billion pounds of contained metal. That'd be like a 250 million ton resource at both projects at around 0.4% copper. But if you look at that and you see these projects, they trade hands at a percent or a value per pound in the ground. And that value, I think we've talked about that before, it's between 5 and 9 cents or something like that. And that was at $3 copper. But imagine that there's probably room in that number for a little bit more. But even at at 5 cents per pound in the ground, you're looking at a couple $100 million of in situ value. And then at 10 cents or 9 cents, you're looking at just under 400 million of in situ value. And that's either 6 or 12 times your current market value. So lots of room for upside here. Really exciting in terms of investors looking to get exposure to copper. This looks like one of the best plays we've seen in terms of it's just not really that not well followed. I don't think that your market cap begins to reflect what you have going on the ground there.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Clay. The way it usually works, from a valuation perspective is the more you de-risk the assets, the higher the valuation, right? So, so that's exciting. And I mean, we are pretty experienced team, so we know where to put our money to be able to get the best value back, right? And that's going to be important moving forward. And we haven't done anything really on the marketing side to the point where we're starting to bring in analysts because we really haven't had the news flow. But with the completion of the Elliott project and also the start of the Florida Cobra project, we're sort of hoping to get some analyst coverage and get the news out there a little bit better. And I think that should hopefully start to see our share price sort of move at that point.
Yeah, we think as more people get tuned into this story, it's certainly going to attract a lot of investor attention, and that generally will create a higher pricing dynamic for the company. For those of you who would like to take a closer look at the company, you can do that on their website, which is www.e29copper.com. Again, the company trades on the TSX Venture as ECU and on the OTCQB as EMTRF. Great to talk with you guys today, and we'll look forward to talking with you again real soon. Maybe when you get some of these next drill results out, it'd be time to reconnect.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to be getting that news out as soon as we can, and again, we're initial drilling is validating existing information, so we're pretty excited about that, and we should get some good results. So yeah, stay tuned. We like seeing this. We like seeing the story unfold, and we love telling it. So
Great. Well, we are staying tuned because this is one that we really like a lot, and we're looking forward to the next round of drill results. And we'll talk to you guys real soon. Richard, Paul, thanks so much for your time today. And for all of those that are listening, thank you for your time. We look forward to talking to you again soon. All right, guys, thanks so much, and talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks, Clay. Thanks again for giving us the opportunity to present our projects to your audience.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, take care.
You got it. Talk to you.
Okay.
You too. Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.